So thank you for being invited to speak here. And I would like to, first of all, thank Richard and Pia and the initiative to have the EMERG grouping of people, researchers interested in this area, the ME, which has been completely invaluable in both direct information, knowledge, but also in inspiration to work with it. And in that area, to Simon, what he has been doing to inspire the group, and me specifically, and his candidate, his researcher, Catherine Sitten, who's very central also in the last phase of this. That I would like to thank. And also, first of all, really, or together with Richard Pia, that would be Trude. She is sitting right there. So in reality, I have been helping her with this research as much as vice versa. So this has been very much a joint project between her and me. She's from the Norwegian ME Association, ME patient, and very, very clear brain. So with that, I would like to start. So this has been an initiative to try to target an area that we suddenly realized was problematic and uncovered. And we did not realize it first in a research setting. It was in a situation where the Norwegian authorities were discussing how do you decide disability benefits for patients with ME, and they needed to measure rest capacity for work in those that could have some work and not only disability benefits. So they proposed a tool, and that was completely, like that. The tool was unusable because it did not target functional capacity at all. It was general questionnaire. So then it dawned on us that question, how do you assess functional capacity? That's exactly the question that you need answered in research trials of drugs or whatever intervention regarding ME. So then that bloomed out into this project here. So we have had 5,857 responses from ME patients. So they are really central in this process I'm describing now. So that has been done by online anonymous surveys targeting ME patients. The message spread via social media and every other channel possible to recruit them. And that has been very effective. Like, for instance, in the first version of this questionnaire, there were 450 answers complete in 4 days. It's this quick. Because they are motivated and people don't have a hobby of filling out these questionnaires online if you don't have ME. So I believe it is a very accurate way of recruiting ME patients. If you did it through specialist services hospitals, it would be junk. So that was a good way of doing it, we think. So it has been 5 iterations, 5 different versions of this questionnaire. I'm just quickly going through the beginning phases of this. The point that we early on after the first iteration, we asked, for example, how often can you meet your friends? How often can you shop? How often can you shower, etc.? And we immediately got the answer. You cannot ask it in that way because it depends on what you have chosen to do, what you have chosen not to do. It's a completely idiotic question. So that was out. So, and then, can you do something? Well, it's related to the first stupid question. You can do it, but if you do it, then you're really down because the consequences of doing it are so bad. So what we realized was, or they told us, you have to ask what happens if you take a shower, if you go to groceries, if you meet your friends, what happens? And also another very, very important thing was go for a short walk. It's a stupid question. What's a short walk? I mean, you cannot ask that question. So what happens if you walk between 100 meters and 1 kilometer? Well, that works. So these were direct feedbacks from the patients. Anyway, so let's go on. If you put into a research project, a questionnaire that included, can you do this? How often do you do this? The not so good way of putting it. But then you would maybe get just not useful information. But if you asked about symptoms, that's probably better, isn't it? Just to ask about your nausea, your fatigue, your headache, your insomnia. That's a good way, isn't it? No, it's not. Because what happens in a typical patient with ME? I'm a pediatrician. I've seen about 600-700 patients and followed them over time. So you learn the patients. What happens if they improve in their disease, their illness? Usually they don't enjoy the reduced symptoms. They increase their activity levels to live life, to reach the same symptom level, right? That is very typically what happens. And what happens in your research, you don't find any response, no effect of your drug treatment, because they have the same level of symptoms. So you have a problem. And then I went through SF36, etc. Okay, you get a general feeling of how life is. And I went through the common data elements database in the USA, etc., etc. A shoulder fatigue scale, whatever. It doesn't work, I don't think. So anyway, this is our shot at trying to develop something that could be better, I hope. So it has, in total, this is the number of responses we have had. Also an international version. I'm not going into that now. These data are from Norway, the ones I'm presenting now. It has been translated and back-translated. Now, what I'm presenting here is a selection of the patients, only those below 60 years of age, not to have confounding from other disorders. And we have healthy controls that they recruited themselves. Anna, can you be my control? Well, we got quite a few, a friend, whatever they recruited. So we have control group 2, so 1,263 patients. And we asked them during the last month, how would you answer these questions on an average day the last month? And this was how they were allowed to score. It was not a Likert scale. What on this 0 to 10? It was 0. I cannot do this, or my capacity will be severely reduced for at least 3 days, point 1. 2, I can do little else on the same day and for 1 or 2 days afterwards. So we have got PEM in here, trying to corner that one. I can do little else on the same day. 3, I must limit other activities on the same day. 4, 5, this rarely affects other activities. 6, who cares? It's okay, no problem. So these are the questions, except they are not exactly the questions. They are reduced right here. So this is not the questionnaire, but it is the essence of every question that we have chosen in the 27 question version. So I'm not using time to present the 55 question version. Actually, we have 10 additional questions. So that was the full version with many questions, because the 27 question version, it correlated so extremely well, I'll show you, with the 55 question version. So this is probably the one that will hopefully be used further on. So using the toilet, showering, standing, getting dressed on regular clothes. So that was the area of personal hygiene. Then moving around, walking from one room to another, etc. Being upright, with sitting in bed for half an hour, to standing for 5 minutes. The orthostatic intolerance is targeted, so it's a symptom, but it's also an activity, a function, right? It's in between a symptom and function. So you also notice the asterisks here. They are the questions, the items chosen for a 13 question version of the fun cap. So you just know what that is. So they may be more important, chosen through correlation analysis and other types of analysis that I have been doing. And heavier housework, inactivities at home, communication, talking, participating in a party. Now, there is an interesting one, 32, participating in a party or family event. That is, of course, more than communication. It's an activity. activities outside of the home, going to shop for groceries, that's important. So that correlates so well with the other ones that it's even maybe could be used alone. But if you couldn't go out of the house, then it wouldn't work. And then it's reactions to light and sound, and concentration, being focused. Again, what Jonas talked about, reading one page and understanding one A4 page text. So these are the type of questions. It's very well described. I hope, it seems, the patients told us it was clear. Now this is, we created average scores. The score was between 0 and 6 on each question. So this is the average score for each area, like personal hygiene, walking, moving around and being upright, activities in the home. So this is just that we have the healthy controls on the top. Of course, they cluster very much together because they don't have a problem with these things. And then we see that the ME patients, they spread out nicely. This is the average of the scores from 0 to 6 on the questions in the personal hygiene. Now this would be for the most severe patients. This is, it spreads them out nicely. So they're mostly over here. And we have the same thing in the other area. So I won't use more time on these. We want to get further on. This is for the other areas, but it seems to differ between the patients in a nice way, I think. So let's go to this one. This is what I talked about. This is the mean of the mean scores of the subscale. So it's a total score. Whether that is a total score of severity level in the patients, I don't know. You should be careful about that because some area may be better indicators of the total disease burden or total activity. I don't know that. It could be. Anyway, it's not necessary to ask 55 questions to assess functional capacity. According to this, 27 questions is enough. This correlates like a line. So now we are going on to comparing the controls to the ME patients on the different scales. So we will just see that it separates the error bars. It's one standard deviation. So we can see, for example, this would be indoor activities. So the one standard deviation is here. Well, we have it down here, so it separates quite well with the, between the controls and the ME patients. Now here, the patients themselves stated whether they were very severe, meaning bedbound and not being able to go to the toilet, etc. And severe, that would be mostly bedbound, and moderate would be housebound, etc. It's a different definition that was used previously today. So that's the ICC definition. So it separates between those severity groups. This is the total score again. So that was, of course, suspected, but it's the same thing here. We don't need to use much time on that. This is just the subscale scores on the various severity groups. This, just shortly, this indicates that there is a high correlation, Pearson correlation coefficient, between the different scales, the means of the different scales. In other words, if you're low in one scale, you're typically low in another scale too, which supports that you maybe don't need to ask so many questions in a research project where you have to be very economical about how many questions you ask to the patients. So the Cronbach alpha, a measure of internal consistency in questionnaires of various measures like depression, anxiety, etc., is very, very high here, which fits with the correlations I just showed. And also the correlation between the 27 question versus certain question is quite good. This is the test-retests. It's only on a subset of the patients. We just got the data in, 23 patients. I didn't include the controls here. It's even better, well, the same in controls. So it seems to be good on test-retest. So the conclusions, let me just look at this one. The validity, the construct validity is probably good. It seems to address what we want to address. It has been given out to doctors who have used it with patients, Jesper, myself, several other doctors. It seems to fit with what you know of the patients. The content validity, probably also good. The criterion validity is completely impossible to assess. There is no gold standard. So we don't know that. Test-retest is good, so an internal consistency, etc. So it may have, I think it has a good validity. It may be useful to assess functional capacity. It's not a measure for symptoms. It's not meant to diagnose, although it could be helpful. So let's just move shortly before I finish. If there was a biomarker, then you would need something like this, or a good measure of functional capacity, to see whether the biomarker, level of the biomarker, would correlate with something like this, I think. So it would be useful in that respect too. So thank you.
Any questions for Kristian? One in the middle here, Richard.
Will you be dangling this under the noses of Parliament when you go to see them, Simon?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Once again?
I think he was asking me. I'm going to use it, but I don't own it.
Okay.
Kristian,
Can he use it, please?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So both the clinical trials we're proposing to run will incorporate FunCap 27.
It would be even better if the DWP used it.
I agree. Yeah.
There has been some interest, so this has not been published yet. It will, of course, be published, and I have enjoyed the feedback here and also heard that. So, but there are some trials quickly going on there, and there is a population-based trial of follow-up in pediatrics, which I'm doing in Bergen, of probably 200 patients, which it will be used there. But I hope to publish it before that, Trude and I, because it's actually it's pretty ready for that. So, but. Yeah. It has been open for the English version, anonymous online, so I wouldn't have problems with somebody using it, just not stating that it's the final version. We have no plans of changing it now.
So the clinical trial should validate the use and the value of it.
I think so.
And then we can twist the arms of people in power.
Excellent.
Yeah. You can come with me when I do that. Any more questions? Well, I'm back there.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, it mightn't be exactly on your shoulders, this one, but I just think this is fantastic work in terms of the categorization of patients, being able to put them into the right categories. It just jars on me a little, the language used in terms. I know there was a lot of debate about CFS being a kind of slightly misleading title, but the mild and moderate does jar as well. You know, I get the very severe and severe and the moderate being housebound, but I'm sure people with mild ME, they wouldn't describe it that way. Just wonder how long is that there, and do you see that changing?
Are you saying that the wording for the degrees are stupid?
Yeah. I'm not saying it's stupid. I think you're doing very good work, and it looks like it'll progress the categorization of patients. But while you're at it, is there a consensus, I suppose, amongst the academics to maybe have a look at that wording? I just think in a world where patients are trying to have it taken seriously and accepted in the general public, I think embrace it or giving it a title mild, I don't think it's entirely helpful.
I like Trude to just do it today, yeah. Yes. It's incredibly inappropriate.
It's really a huge problem, both the wording of the different degrees of severity, but also the fact that we have no consensus about what we actually mean with the terms we have today. Because we use the ICC scale here which says that very severe is bedbound and in need of care. Severe is mostly bedbound, and moderate is mostly housebound, and then mild has at least a 50% loss of function. But that does not coincide with other scales of severity. So the NICE criteria has housebound as severe. And we also did a survey in Norway of the very severe patients, and I tried to look into the claim that 25% of patients are severe, and I can't find where it comes from. So if anyone knows, please tell me. But we did a European survey and a Norwegian survey where 75% of patients are housebound or worse, which is a much higher number. And we really, really need to know how many have severe disease and how severe it is, and we need to agree on what we call it.
Of course, it's likely that in those surveys, those who were more severe answered the survey, so we have a selection bias, of course, but still, it's right there. So it should be grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4.
Yes.
Why not? Then they can scratch their heads, and that's just a good thing.
Okay. Thank you, Kristian.